Mythology is there to glue a society together. It gives you common ideas about who you are.
At last.
What your society is, what you believe in, what your God is, what your values are. And it's based on the psychological motifs behind myths.
What do you see when you watch a movie? Is it the action? What about the acting?
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up!
Don't bully me, Daniel!
How about the shots? Maybe you concentrate on all of these at once, and who could blame you? After all, each of these elements are integral pieces of the cinematic puzzle with the power to make or break an experience. Yet, at least for most Western movies, each of these elements pays tribute, so to speak, to one thing: the story.
This is a tasty burger. Vincent, you ever had a Big Kahuna burger? Want a bite? They're real tasty. Ain't hungry. What country you from? What ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what?
Yet it's overwhelmingly easy for we as audience members to lose sight of the importance of the stories we tell. We trivialize them, saying to ourselves that these tales are little more than fanciful distractions, playthings for our minds to toss about before becoming bored and crushed under the weight of devastating true reality.
None of it matters? Wait a second. None of it matters? Okay. No. Good. Great. So now the truth comes out, doesn't it?
But what if they're not? What if movies and the stories they tell serve as more than amusing servants to civilization's whims? What if a culture's deepest values and beliefs about humanity and the individuals therein are expressed parable-like through the cinematic storytelling medium? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Obviously, if we were to look at every story and every kind of story, it would take way, way too long. Let's just look at one. Let's look at the hero's journey.
Will you be saving her then?
I can't swim.
Pride of the King's Navy, you are. Do not lose these.
While the hero's journey, what Joseph Campbell referred to as the monomyth, has indeed been referenced many times in the last 50 years by some of the most prestigious elites of the cinematic community, there is surprisingly little in the way of explaining why or how this trope has been and continues to be impactful to Western audiences. Now, some of you might have no clue whatsoever what I'm talking about, and others might be familiar with the term hero's journey, but not familiar with the specifics. So, for clarity's sake, let's go over it together. The hero's journey is broken up into 3 acts: the departure, the initiation, and the return. The departure begins in the ordinary world, where we're given insight into the hero as a character. We learn who they are.
Dr. Jones, again we see there is nothing you can possess which I cannot take away.
What their drives are.
I'm looking for the Brittle brothers.
What problems they're facing, and other unique characteristics and flaws which enrich them as individuals within the story.
How many agents did the KGB put aboard my boat?
Your boat, Captain?
Yes.
This vessel belongs to the people of the Soviet Union. Besides, if the KGB or the GRU has agents aboard, I will be the last to know.
The call to adventure breaks apart the comfortable consistency of the ordinary world, presenting the hero with a challenge or quest that must be pursued.
I tell you what, why don't you come down, just the pair of you, for the weekend? I'd love to have an opinion of a paleobotanist as well. I've got a jet standing by in Choco.
The hero, out of some fear or insecurity or other reluctance, refuses this call, taking comfort in the stability and consistency of their ordinary world.
Why are you talking to me, man?
Because I looked up your file while you were drooling on the floor. Your aptitude tests are off the charts, so what is it? You like being the only genius-level repeat offender in the Midwest?
Maybe I love it.
The hero then meets their mentor, who provides them with either training, insightful wisdom, or some other gift, building the confidence of the hero.
We call them the walking dead, because it takes about a week for the barbs to reach the vital organs.
What is this?
That is an electromagnet hooked up to a car battery, and it's keeping the shrapnel from entering your heart.
The reluctance of the hero to enter a special world is lessened through the mentor's influence. With the newfound confidence from the mentor, the hero crosses the threshold, the first stage of the initiation. The hero is now committed to the journey and enters a special world. There is no turning back now.
That's got to be the best part I've ever seen.
So it would seem.
The hero will endure new tests to their strength. Find some comfort in allies.
If I get him to you, can you get him to talk? I'll get him to sing.
And encounter dangerous enemies. We and the hero are educated as to the rules of the special world. With the world now known and their footing secure, the hero begins preparations to approach the inmost cave, the greatest force of fear or danger that the hero must face.
Haben Sie das gehört? Das ist das Geräusch meiner Walter, die direkt auf Ihre Hoden gerichtet ist.
Ja. Warum richten Sie Ihre Walter auf meine Hoden?
Weil Sie sich eben verraten haben, Hauptsturmführer. Sie sind so deutsch wie dieser Scotch.
Perhaps the hero plans an attack, reviews their knowledge, or else has weakened the enemy's forces. Either way, nothing pleasant awaits the hero in the ordeal. The confrontation with the greatest, most difficult challenge the hero will face.
Sir, that's not her door.
I know. It's yours.
To become greater, to reach the end of the journey, the hero must undergo death and be reborn.
It's too late! We're banished, genius! We're in the human world!
Who the hell is that?
The hero survives, overcomes fear, the dragon, death, and is rewarded for the struggle. Perhaps the reward is a tool or weapon or even a piece of knowledge. Whatever the reward may be, it shall surely help the hero on the path towards the climax, and then the end. Armed with the reward, the hero begins on the road back, recommitting to the completion of the quest in order to return to the ordinary world. Perhaps the villain has had a victory and now boasts in triumph. Perhaps a countdown has begun, ticking away seconds until doom falls. Regardless, the hero must press on and face the resurrection, the most dangerous life and death ordeal.
Oui, Shoshana.
The battle risks not only the life of the hero, but the lives of others, and perhaps even the entire world.
This guy's gonna hurt us, Walter?
No, Donnie. These men are cowards.
Okay. So we take some money, you have fun, we call Shadifa.
Fuck you.
Hey, no, come on, Walter. Come on, we're ending this thing cheap, man.
No, what's mine is mine.
Oh, come on, Walter.
No funny stuff.
All right. I got $4, almost $5.
The hero must be willing to sacrifice everything to win this battle and prove themselves a true hero.
Come and get it.
We fuck you up.
Show me what you got, nihilist.
I fuck you.
Walter, come on, he's got a sword thing, man.
Shit with a nine-toed woman.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
Overcoming the resurrection, our hero returns home to the ordinary world with the elixir, purified by the struggles and pain of their journey. The land is healed, the elixir shared with others, brought about by the example of the hero.
I am Iron Man.
Okay, that was a lot, I know. But in order to move forward, it's important to know the structure we're looking for, especially since it appears so often. You can see the hero's journey popping up in several well-known movies like The Dark Knight, Ready Player One, Alien, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Edge of Tomorrow. You can even see it in older films like It's a Wonderful Life and Wizard of Oz, the latter of which is a classic example of the monomyth. The Hero's Journey podcast goes into great depth on this topic, and I highly recommend you check them out. However, perhaps the most well-known and most discussed examples of the cinematic hero's journey is found in the original Star Wars trilogy. The most common example people give when talking about the monomyth in Star Wars is the first one, A New Hope. Throughout the film, we see a young farm boy who looks for more in life, presented with a quest to save a princess, refusing the quest initially to his new mentor figure, but soon finds himself on an adventure with new allies against powerful enemies. He then loses his mentor and is on his own with the training given to him, which he uses to blow up the Death Star, defeat the enemy, and save the day. All said, it's not very complicated and seems to be a very cut and dry, albeit exceptionally told, hero's journey. Yet one too could view the entire trilogy as a singular journey of the hero Luke Skywalker, A New Hope merely serving as the departure section of the hero's journey. In Empire Strikes Back, Luke crosses his first threshold towards becoming a Jedi. He meets Yoda, a new mentor, at the behest of the ghost of his old mentor, realizing the depth of his fear and inevitable conflict with Darth Vader, the man who reportedly killed Luke's father and whom Luke watched kill Obi-Wan. He approaches the inmost cave and endures the ordeal of his fight with the Dark Lord.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
Only to come to the final pain of realizing that his father, whom he has promised to become, is the man he hunts and despises. The Return of the Jedi sees Luke rewarded for his training and suffering, being more in control and far more powerful than we have ever seen him before. He begins his road back, realizing that his father is held captive by evil forces and surrenders himself over to Vader, despite being told by his mentors that Anakin is fully lost.
He's more machine now than man, twisted and evil.
He undergoes his resurrection, nearly succumbing to the dark side and suffering greatly under the Emperor, when Anakin finally breaks free of his bonds to save his son. Luke then, with his father's body, returns to the ordinary world of everyday people, having saved them from great evil and finally becoming a Jedi Knight. Another story which features several hero's journey-esque characters is the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I think we should get off the road. Get off the road! Quick!
You have a skilled ranger who refuses his kingship, finds himself upon the road of the ring, is called to abandon the quest for the ring to save his companions, reunites with an old mentor, rallies a leader for a fight, becomes king to save others.
I bid you stand! Men of the West!
Walks towards his great doom only to find his cause victorious, before returning to his kingdom and marrying his love. Aragorn's character fits fairly well with the archetype.
But he was destroyed. Sauron was destroyed.
Interestingly, Frodo, the arguable main hero of the story, excluding Samwise Gamgee, who's one of the greatest heroes in fiction, does not fit in so well with the monomyth. He never refuses the call, and though he goes through similar beats to the hero's journey, he never assumes himself to be ready or worthy, recognizing that he's the only chance, weak of body though he is. Only his willpower, along with Sam, again an absolute beast of a character, keep him going towards his end goal, which he ultimately fails in. Though the ring is destroyed, he fails his quest, succumbing to the power of the One Ring. Frodo doesn't change his homeland. He merely sacrifices his comfort, health, and mind for the greater good, to let his land continue as it has. He is no longer able to take comfort in his beloved homeland, but instead must sail west to find healing across the sea. It's no surprise, though, why characters like Frodo or Luke act the way they do in the context of the cultures in which they were written. Indeed, Tolkien's strong Catholic background clearly influenced his storytelling. The morals and ideals of these stories are founded on the Judeo-Christian ethic, a system of values dating back thousands of years. Specific moral sentiments included in this ethic include notions such as loving your neighbor, transforming yourself into something more and better than who you were, and the significance and value of people, the idea that people are worth saving. This ethic formed the origins of the modern West, beginning in the time of Jesus in the 1st century and really cementing near the end of the Roman Empire. As humanity moved into the Middle Ages, a great many European countries, under the supervision of the Catholic Church, adopted Christianity as their main religion and source of values. Of course, the leaders and rulers of the time failed more often than not to live up to the values they claimed to love. The phrase, "kill them all, God will know his own," spoken just prior to the mass slaughter of over 20,000 people, doesn't seem to fit the whole love your neighbor and people are valuable notion. Nevertheless, the values from the Judeo-Christian ethic remained popular and valued by many within medieval Europe, and Christianity's influence continued to spread. Indeed, you can see these beliefs echoed in some of the most important and most remembered legislation of the past. Take the Magna Carta, for instance. The Magna Carta was written in the 13th century, used to address the many grievances British people had with the then King John. Amidst the issues the populace had were placed a number of values and clauses which challenged the king's absolute power, suggesting that the people, at least according to Clause 39, free men, ought to possess certain rights such as justice and fair trials. Discriminatory as this clause is, it was an important step back towards a more democratic society. By creating this document, the people of England stood up for themselves against the monarchy, took the first step away from autocratic monarchy, and began to see themselves as powerful, and not simply beholden to the whims and wishes of their lieges. Fast forward several hundred years, and you can see similar values to these in another document. After several decades of new taxes, policies, and a lack of ability to represent themselves before Parliament to oppose these things adequately, the colonial Americans elected to secede from England's rule and establish their own government and nation. Informing the British government of this was facilitated by the American Declaration of Independence. Interestingly enough, there exists within the Declaration of Independence one of the steps of the hero's journey, the call to action.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. People don't talk that way anymore.
Beautiful. Huh. No idea what you said.
It means if there's something wrong, those who have the ability to take action have the responsibility to take action.
This document furthers the notion that there is power within the people, and therefore value and significance to those who live. It carries over ideals from the Judeo-Christian ethic, championing God-given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Though this document did not ensure such things for all people of the time, women and enslaved people being notable exceptions, it was an important step in establishing the modern Western world. But how do people think now? Certainly there were these ideas and ethical systems in times of antiquity, though they were rarely well upheld. But what about now? I sought an answer, and you, the audience, provided. A short while ago, I created a 5-question poll to fill out. Small enough for the average individual to be willing to take, with enough variety in the questions to acquire sufficient information. Thus far, I have received over 300 responses, the data from which has helped convey the beliefs and values of the public. When asked how important conventional heroes were to stories, a mere 5.3% of participants believed that such characters were necessary, whereas 16.9% believed them to be unimportant. However, when posed the question of how important it was for main characters to undergo change, an enormous 70.2% of participants voted either necessary or very important. I found that interesting, though as of yet indicative of nothing necessarily. I went on, asking the public what traits they valued in characters. Compassion, perseverance, and the willingness to change were the 3 most selected options. The correlation between these responses and the previous question seemed to be quite significant. But still, I wanted to be certain. I asked next what parts of fiction people found to be compelling, to which 40.3% of participants voted characters and the paths they take, and 26.4% voted characters and who they are. I concluded by asking if it matters more where a character starts and who they are to begin with, or where they end up. 41.5% of responses proclaimed that both were important, but where characters end up is more important, with 28% saying that neither matters and that the path is what's important. Though the first question's answers revealed that many participants were either neutral or negatively predisposed towards traditional heroes, the 4 questions spoke otherwise. Though we may not consciously value heroes of antiquity, the properties of these fictitious individuals are still deeply ingrained within how we value things. The willingness to change, compassion, and perseverance are all characteristics of traditional heroes, who have derived these characteristics from the ethics that have resulted in much of post-ancient history. In his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, Joseph Campbell looks into the mythological and symbolic views of humanity. His goal was to determine that all people from all parts of the world held near and dear to their hearts similar core concepts. The hero's journey, or monomyth as he called it, was one such concept that he claimed could be found in ancient myths from all around the world. Though his views on the matter became quite popular in his time, not everyone was so keen to consider his views to be necessarily correct. Glenda Hambley, for instance, suggests that Campbell applied Western values to tales from distant lands, and was therefore able to contrive an argument that such values were universal. The first step in understanding Campbell's misuse of myths is to become aware of the unique worldview of First Nation cultures that he cites. Hambley's arguments and grievances with Campbell's views seem to be correct, as the hero's journey seems to have strong roots within Western principles and values. Consider again the values on which the West was founded: transforming into a better version of yourself, valuing and loving others, power within the individual.
Son, I'm Captain Jack Sparrow. Savvy?
Each of these remains a core concept of the hero's journey, the cinematic renditions of the monomyth possessing no exception. Star Wars, for instance, is a monomyth about saving others and transforming. In A New Hope, Luke saves a princess. In Empire, he saves and tries to save his friends and rebel comrades. And in Return of the Jedi, he saves his father. Yet it is not only Luke doing the saving, as he, in each one of the films, is saved by others: Han, Leia, and Anakin. Throughout his journey, Luke goes from eager farm boy to involved rebel and arrogant student to compassionate and wise leader. He changes from this,
"But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters."
I can't get involved. I've got work to do. It's not that I like the Empire, I hate it, but there's nothing I can do about it right now.
To this,
You want the impossible.
You have learned much, young one.
You'll find I'm full of surprises.
to this.
You must face Darth Vader again.
I can't kill my own father. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
So be it, Jedi.
Okay, but so what? What does it matter if there's a connection between Western culture and the hero's journey? People have, since stories began, told tales about what they know and assigned their own values to it, so naturally you'd see this. To that I would agree, yet it's not merely the stories which are impacted. One researcher, Daniela Lennar, sought to find out just how impactful the hero's journey could be if individuals participating in her study were placed in situations and guided along the steps of the journey. Indeed, many of the participants did find change along the way of the one-week study. However, as participants were attending the event for the purpose of bettering themselves, and indeed given the short time frame, the results are not necessarily indicative of anything, which Lennar addressed and acknowledged. Despite the inconclusiveness of Lennar's individualized study, there can be no doubt that the hero's journey possesses a powerful ability to inspire and influence individuals in the real world, not merely characters within stories. One way to view this power of inspiration is by considering the hero's journey and the changes it brings as a cycle, the proverbial chicken and egg of storytelling. Real-world events bring forth real-world values. Real-world values inspire adaptation of these values into tales. The tales are then brought to the individuals who read, consume, and learn from them. The individual then goes forth into the real world and performs actions, creating real-world events with the values and examples from within the tales, and the cycle starts again. This is, I think, part of the reason why Star Wars was so successful when it first came out. Being only 32 years removed from the end of World War II, many of those who saw, fought, and experienced the effects of that war would have still been alive. Indeed, the way World War II is often portrayed, at least from the American perspective, seems to take on a hero's journey-esque sort of structure. You have the ordinary world of peacetime, a call to action in the war by mentor allies, a refusal of the call, crossing of the first threshold after Pearl Harbor, finding friends and allies in the French, British, and Russians, finding tests and trials and reaching the inmost cave of not finding great military success at first, suffering many losses. You move on from those losses to find yourself at the ordeal of the invasion of Normandy, wherein you suffer greatly, but ultimately find great reward gaining a foothold in Europe. The road back towards the end of the war begins with the invasion of Berlin and the defeat of Hitler, followed by the resurrection, climaxing with the final fight with the Japanese and the dropping of the 2 atomic bombs, before returning with the elixir, helping repair damages from the war both to allies and former enemies. While this imperfect interpretation of history is told from a highly biased perspective, indeed ignoring some of the more heinous things perpetrated in that war by both sides, it is the version of events that was told, more or less, to the masses of the day, a version which hits many beats of the hero's journey.
Great shot, kid! That was 1 in a million!
The structure of the war's story becomes familiar to audiences. Filmmakers interpret the structure into film. The films are presented to the audiences who consume, and the audiences who possess real-world experiences and fictitious examples are transformed in their thoughts and beliefs, continuing the ethos of the hero's journey. Perhaps this is why World War II movies often have some version of the hero's journey as part of their storytelling. Take Saving Private Ryan, for example. The ordinary world of Miller's grave and of past war, called to adventure on the beach, Miller's temporary refusal of the call as he watches in shock and terror, receiving the gift of Bangalore's, crossing the literal first threshold of breaking the German line and accepting the call to go rescue Ryan. Miller, now enveloped by the New World, finds trials with his squad, with doubts and foes within a town, journeys to the inmost cave of the machine gun, and suffers the ordeal of their losses at the machine gun despite surviving. Miller receives his reward, finding Ryan, yet Ryan is unwilling to go back. Miller's road back is through the Battle of Rommel, finding his resurrection as tanks bear down on him, and he is rescued by Allied planes. Ryan returns with the elixir, visibly changing and becoming older as we cut back to modern day, having transformed the world but suffered greatly. Okay, but what does all of this really mean? Perhaps the Western world is influenced by the hero's journey and the hero's journey influenced by it. Perhaps Campbell did mislabel the hero's journey as universal. The universality of the hero's journey is less important, I would say, than the values it brings forth to the individuals who consume it. Who can we be if we recognize what influences our thoughts and beliefs? How can we better ourselves? In what ways can we help those around us if we don't understand the power of cinematic storytelling and of the powerful devices used within? There are as many answers to those questions as there are people who would ask it. What you see when you watch a movie is perhaps less important than what you do as a result, because in the end, anyone can be a hero, if you're willing to take that step across the threshold. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this.